and good afternoon, and whatever ungodly hour it may be for some of you. Welcome to this third talk in our current retreat, late November 2020, called Original Love 4. So as you'll know, this is the one where we're addressing more squarely sort of the great matter of Buddhism. Buddhism being named after this shift a human being can go through, known as awakening. We're exploring what it is. Is it an it or is it a they? Is it a family of experiences, not just one essential experience? Are there common themes among different ways it's interpreted in different traditions? Is it possible, as many have claimed, that it's a deep, common, universal human experience, a kind of deep reality of who we are? Or is it, as some have claimed, merely something constructed by various traditions of practice and belief? You might imagine that I don't think so. I think it's more the former, that there have been many different paths that we know about, and probably many, many more that we don't know about in human history and prehistory, that I suspect have found this other sort of set of dimensions, or maybe a dimensionlessness. So, okay, to get a little bit more sort of specific, I got the great honor, actually, and privilege in this talk of addressing the Koan Mu, this first Koan for many of us who have done Koan training or who are doing Koan training in the Zen way. Often it begins with Mu. In fact, there is a tradition in Sambo Zen and other lineages that work with Koans, that the first talk of any retreat is on the Koan Mu. I've let that go of late, and it's kind of fun. Well, we'll see if it's fun for you guys, but anyway, it's kind of nice for me to get back to talking about the Koan Mu. I'm going to start with a little account of what it can be like to be awakened by Mu. This is coming back to this master Soko Morinaga Roshi. Many years of doing intense zazen at this point in his story. Much of it with the Koan Mu. And he's at Daitokuji Monastery, I believe, at this point, training with a different master than his first master, and in more of a larger training monastery, very kind of important place in Rinzai Zen in Japan. Years and years of this, please bear that in mind. Doing zazen and still more zazen, I chalked up nothing but distress and fatigue. Both my head and my body began to lose their normal functioning. The thought that I would surely meet my death if I continued in this vein arose many times to interrupt my practice. But to give the conclusion before the explanation, I can tell you that matters most definitely did not take the turn that I feared. The extremes of fatigue and anguish did not give way to death, but evolved, quite contrary to expectations, into a curve that led right back to where I had started out. One night I sat in the middle of the night, a lump of fatigue sitting on a zazen cushion. Both body and consciousness were in a haze, and I could not have roused the desire for Satori if I had wanted to, when suddenly the fog cleared and a world of lucidity opened itself. Clearly seeing, clearly hearing, it was yet a world in which there was no me. I cannot fully explain that time. To venture an explanation would be to err somewhere. The one thing I am sure of is that in this instant, the functioning of the heart with which I was born came into play in its purest form. I could not keep still in my uncontainable joy. Without waiting for the morning wake-up bell, I made an unprecedented call on the Roshi and received permission to leave the temple for about 2 hours to deliver the news of my experience to my old master, Zwigan Roshi. Zwigan Roshi's temple, by the way, was just across town in Kyoto. It didn't take me an hour to walk through the black darkness to Daishuin, the other temple. When I arrived, Roshi was still in bed. I crawled right up to his pillow and said very simply, "I finally saw." Roshi sprang from his bed, examined me for a time as if with a glare, and said, "It's from now on. From now on, sit strongly." This is all he said to me. From then on, for the next 16 years, until my 40th year and Zwigan Roshi's death at 87, whether in the monastery or back in the temple, I continued Koan practice. No, really, I must say that I continue still. It's not just a matter of the sayings of old masters, but the living koan of human life that continues without limit. That is very beautifully put. These koans, they are intended, or they are capable of, or they are used not for their own sake, but to open something in us and keep it opening. Any idea that this is like, I'll get this, I'll put a check in the box and be done. How wrong. This isn't something we get. Whatever this awakening is, it's something that happens to us. We're simply not allowed to chalk it up. If we think we do, we've lost it. All it can ever be is the most profound unfolding of the human heart. It's not something that happened, it's something that is happening. This is a crucial point. Somebody asked yesterday about pride with koans. Is there some connection or something? Can there be? I don't know the full intent of the question, but it was in me somehow after the end of the main session yesterday. And yeah, it can be a risk, I think, that, we've been told there's this great experience you can have, sit with this strange little syllable and something might happen to you. And maybe it does. Maybe we're lucky and the bud opens. We don't make that happen. Quite the reverse. It's something that happens when we're just pulverized. It's not enough to say we get humble. It's no. We're sort of obliterated, and then something is clear, something utterly marvelous about what it is to exist, and somehow what that is isn't separate from the existence of everything else. It's one all-inclusive wonder. How could anybody own it? How could anybody mark it up as an accomplishment? But we're human. It's quite possible that after the wonder of such an experience, we may start to think, hey, I got that. And of course, that means we're sort of, we don't got it. It means we're back to square one. It's perfectly okay to be back to square one. That's actually, in some ways, it's the only right place to be in Zen, is always square one. Terrible if we think we're not at square one. Very dangerous to not be a square one. Look at this great master. He's a teacher of many, and actually he used to come to London, Soka Morinaga, through the I guess the 60s, 70s, I'm not sure, 80s. There was an august old society in London called the Buddhist Society, founded by a rather renowned figure called Christmas Humphreys. I don't know, back in the early to mid, I guess mid 20th century. And every year they'd invite a number of different kinds of Buddhists, and one of them was Soka Morinaga Roshi. I never met him myself, but one of our Dharma brothers, Valerie and I, Bruce Harris Roshi, he somehow, he's American, but he spent some of his childhood or youth in London, and he met Soka Morinaga in London way back, as a teenager, and was inspired to go and join his little temple in Kyoto and lived there for 3 or 4 years. That was how Bruce began his journey into Zen, into life, into the core of our humanity. So, Mu can do that to us. It isn't a predictable thing. It isn't even a reliable thing. But it's very real, and perhaps there's nothing more real. I suppose I don't really want to say perhaps. I believe that in terms of what I've experienced myself. Nothing is more real than what we discover we are part of in this central experience of Zen, of Buddhism, dare I say, of humanity, known as awakening. However, there are other hazards. Perhaps the main one is that for all the blessedness of this kind of practice, which is, in the right circumstances, I think, and with healthy support and guidance and community is as wholesome a thing as we can do. But nevertheless, once there is something like awakening in the air, an unfortunate thing can happen, which is that there's some kind of, distinction. Those who have tasted it and those who haven't. It's a very unfortunate thing. And anybody who's lucky enough to have had a taste will know that from its perspective, it's utterly false. There's no distinction anywhere, in any way. All things are marvelously, fully, totally, uniquely themselves, incorporating everything, engulfing everything. There can't be distinction. But before we've tasted that, it sure sounds like something different. And there can be, a kind of two classes of practitioner. It can feel like that. I mean, I know that myself. I remember going to this monastery repeatedly in New York State for sessions, and as a young practitioner, and of course there were these sort of exalted folks who got to sit near the altar, who were allowed their own cushions. They would have little their initials sort of on tape on the side of their cushions. I remember one session, actually, I was fiercely uncomfortable, and every day I'd be sifting through the cushions that were available in the sort of store, trying to find the beefiest ones. I wanted to be higher always, and you're allowed up to 2, and I'd put them on their sides to get even more thickness out of them. And I would, because you could see others had done it, I'd stuck tape on the handles and put H or HS, on with a felt tip on the little tape, because I'd managed to get a set that actually worked for me. And then, next morning during the cleaning period, these precious ones I got together, they'd be gone. And there'd be some little shriveled old thing left on his hand for me. No tape. And it turned out, non-exalted people weren't allowed to put tape on their cushions. Only the good ones, the ones who'd been through this moo barrier, they could, But actually, we were the ones who really needed it. Us poor schmucks in agony, who had no idea of this sort of blissful state of awakening. We were just grinding through hour after hour. So much so, I remember one of these sessions, there was a very nice guy who was a resident, who was a sort of a bit of a kind of roving singer-songwriter, and he was living at the monastery for a year or something. He happened to have skill as a plumber, and they had some problem with the plumbing during that retreat. And he was off much of the sitting. He was off sort of crawling down crawl spaces and with wrenches and whatever, the blow torch and fixing pipes and stuff. And I remember thinking, lucky chap. he's allowed out of the zendo, that kind of grinding difficulty of doing these retreats. Now, okay, that's why Henry has taken this reckless step of having these original love retreats. That's why we're doing these retreats, because I wanted to convey my deep conviction that every step of the way is utterly blessed. Every step of the way is equally filled with love in a way that we can taste. If we if you think of the first retreat on mindfulness, and by the way, all of these components are pertinent in all of them. So just bear that in mind somehow. So, but this, developing mindfulness, maybe this is, a fringe, idiosyncratic, even reckless way to define it. But I feel that when our mindfulness really switches on, it may be gently or it may be strongly, there's a sense of, yeah, this is okay. I can love this. Or, as I think it was Ram Dass used to say, real mindfulness is loving awareness. I agree. And then the second zone, so to speak, support, finding that, just the very wonder of existing, the gift of existing, is coming from a trillion other things than ourselves. This capacity to be a human body, a human mind, human heart, this experience, it depends on everything but us. And to open to that, however in however small a way, is to let in love. It's to be grateful. It's to be steeped in love. And then the third one, getting absorbed, getting into the deeper states, the samadhi states, jhana states of deep absorption, is to become more and more fused with our experience and not separate from it. By the way, this question had come up a couple of times about those kind of non-dual awareness practices where that are commonly taught these days, where you discover there's this all embracing awareness present always, that hasn't changed. Its characteristics are unchanging. I wonder whether that could be mapped onto perhaps the fifth and or sixth jhana, possibly. And if so, then from a Buddhist perspective, probably wouldn't quite count as awakening. But I don't know. That depends on how you parse out the jhanas. Like I said, it's a family, all these awakening zones, and they're not so easy to. There's no need really to separate and distinguish, and because for this very reason that they're all different manifestations of love anyway. And once we got the love, once we feel that, nothing else matters really, if you see what I mean. And then the fourth one, this retreat we're doing now, is looking at the experience of awakening. Okay, so Mu. I'm going to quote first from a lovely Theravada practitioner, Ajahn Sumedho, who I believe is the first American abbot of a Theravada Buddhist monastery. He cautions us against trying to get something special. And this is Ajahn Sumedho. For minds obsessed by compulsive thinking and grasping, you simplify your meditation practices to just 2 words: let go. Rather than try to develop this practice and then develop that, achieve this, go into that, just let go. The grasping mind wants to read sutras, study Pali, learn Sanskrit, then the Madhyamaka, then the Prajnaparamita, get ordinations in Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, write books, and become a renowned authority on Buddhism. Instead of becoming the world expert on Buddhism and being invited to great international conferences, why not just let go? Let go. For years, I did nothing but this in my practice. Every time I tried to understand or figure things out, I'd say, let go, let go, let go, until the desire would fade out. So I'm making it very simple for you to save you from getting caught in an incredible amount of suffering. There's nothing more sorrowful than having to attend international Buddhist conferences. Some of you might have the desire to become the Buddha of the age, Maitreya, radiating love throughout the world. Instead, just be an earthworm who knows only 2 words: let go, let go, let go. You see, ours is called the lesser vehicle, the Hinayana. So we only have these poverty-stricken practices. Well, Mr. Sumedo, we've got a practice with only 1 word. All you have to do, 1 word, mu, mu, mu. You see how we can get settled. We can be like a pebble, gently sinking down through a pond. And you know, the silt in the pond water gets denser the lower the pebble goes, sinking down into things, the midst of things, the midst of this moment, sinking down, sinking down. And at some point, there's just enough density of silt that it slows the pebble's descent and it comes to rest. And then we can really be with mu. You may get little wisps of silt stirred up. Sure, no problem. But it's more available, more accessible to taste what it is to be down in these depths of stillness with really nothing else, just mu. That's the sort of level of simplicity, of poverty-strickenness of our practice. Just the human body and mu. Very simple. Very simple. You know, we may sort of work through stuff, getting to that simplicity. Of course, that's no problem. That's how it should be. We could actually, I suppose we could sort of map these different zones of these retreats all onto mu. You know, the first one is just building up a certain level of mindfulness that can hold mu somewhat regularly. Second would be trusting more and more for Mu to do the work, that it knows what to do. It's come down as a practice because it is deeply helpful. And we just have to let it do its helpful work. It's not all about us. I mean, I don't mean that as don't be selfish. I mean, don't think it's all down to you to make things happen in your practice. It's simply not. And then the third level of getting absorbed in Mu, getting absorbed by Mu. We're down in the silt, us and Mu. So simple. And then actually, sort of another process can happen whereby the one doing Mu and Mu, they discover that they're closer than they thought. These two items, me and Mu, that somehow it sort of, usually a bit suddenly, becomes clear that we thought we were two, but we're not. Suddenly it just presents itself. It may just be a moment and it's gone. That's fine. But we weren't apart from one another, Mu and me, the way we thought. And then the fourth one is this realization, this awakening. We've had various hints and descriptions through more than hints, marvelous descriptions from Valerie yesterday of this boundless goneness and the all-pervading oneness. And this is what we can find, and then of course it's everything being that. So hold on just a sec, please. Just going to check my notes and the time. Okay. Please enjoy. This is precious time to be gathered like this, to do, to be absolved for a few days of our normal duties and responsibilities, to be able to devote time and energy and resources like this to practice, and to be able to do it in a way that is of course it's like any human sort of method. It's imperfect, it has its setbacks and blind spots, no doubt, but this is a well-seasoned path, this Sambo Zen. It's a long tried and tested way of growing, in consciousness, growing in our hearts, uncovering treasures of our existence, and learning to live helpfully from them. And it's all an ongoing process, ongoing, unfolding. And this kind of gathering is a really precious mile marker in our life of in our way of growth and development as creatures with very alive, tender, sensitive, responsive, expressive hearts. And so let's appreciate it and be grateful for it, and let's also be very eager and willing to express our gratitude through the way we live outside of retreat time. Okay, thank you.